So, please, can you introduce yourself a little bit, talking about your background, what are you doing, working on? Starting with Ana Carolina.
It's working? Yes. Okay, I'm Ana Carolina Lorena. I work on ITA, Institute of Tecnológico Aeronáutica, or Aeronáutica Tecnológico Institute. But I've been professor in other institutions as well. I've been at the São Paulo Federal University and ABC Federal University too. But now I'm at ITA. And I've been working with machine learning since my undergraduate. That was in University of São Paulo in São Carlos. And my interests right now are focused on something you already have seen here. It's about auto machine learning. I'm working a little bit on this theme.
Hi, hello. I'm a principal data scientist at Experian, Serasa Experian, by now. And I'm also an associate professor of applied mathematics here at USP, University of São Paulo. I'm sort of an old dog in this area. Sorry. I'm sort of an old dog in this area. I did my PhD in 2001 in machine learning. So it was not fashionable at that time. It was really difficult to have that many people to talk to. What I'm trying to do now is sort of make university and company, business world and university to communicate. And it's really difficult because there is a lot of misunderstandings in both sides. In particular, I think this is a Brazilian phenomenon, but that's what I'm trying to do. That's it, yeah.
Okay, I'm Sandor. I've been building predictive models for a long time, especially for consumer goods companies. And in 2016, I joined Nubank as a data scientist to build customer behavior models. And now I'm the head of the data scientists in Nubank.
Thank you. So starting this conversation, I would like to ask you, what are you facing right now using machine learning? What are the big challenges you are facing on it? And talking about the ecosystem, we can talk about the toolbox or people skills. What are the big challenges you are facing?
It's always me.
Ladies first.
Yes, I know. It's always like that.
I will change it. The next one.
I'm used to that. Yes, you must be too. Well, as I said to them, my background is academical. I've always been in the academy here in Brazil. And the difficulties I faced there would be to get students to the area, because I think the market is absorbing, even if we'll do something in your undergraduation, then the market absorbs you. So we have this, it's difficult to get students in machine learning, but I think it's for a good reason, because you're getting employed. And and it's also, I think it's difficult also to communicate with companies here, with the industry in Brazil. And it's for several reasons, but one of the main reasons that I see, that not particularly in ITA right now, but when I was at Unifesp, was the bureaucracy. In the university, since it's usually they are, I've worked on public institutions, you have a lot of bureaucracy to get, to be able to work with the companies, because we are hired as dedicated to the university. And so, for example, in Unifesp, it took more than 1 year to be able to work with a company. So I think 1 year in the market is a lot. Okay.
Renato?
Well, I prepared some notes, right? So, first thing I think is important to us. It's important to understand there is at least two kinds of machine learning users. So we have the technician, I would say, people that have an instrumental knowledge of machine learning, and also people that use machine learning as a way of thinking. Let's say a way of thinking about interesting business questions. So two kinds of people. And I think one thing that's hard from the point of view of companies is finding the right people, because I feel that now machine learning is more or less like teenager sex. Everybody does it. At least everybody talks about it. So I think it's pretty difficult to find the right people. And I would say that part of the problem is in the university, because we are not forming the right people in the right time. We're taking a very long time to adapt our courses. At least at University of São Paulo is like that. It's very difficult to start things going. So we have to be quicker in that. From the point of view of the company, I would say that nobody knows exactly what to do with that. So companies are, at least the companies that I have been talking to, they want to first understand what kind of value you can extract from using these new techniques, and what kind of changes you can produce in your system when you start automatizing processes that are increasingly cognitive, I would say. So I think that's the challenges that I can think about.
Okay.
Okay. I'm risking being redundant here, but of course, hiring people is a major issue, especially when you think about seniority, right? Because it's easier, not easy, to find people at very junior levels as data scientists or even machine learning engineers, but it's very hard to find someone with a higher level of seniority or even experience, because, well, everything is new here in Brazil. So that's one of the biggest issues right now. For us to find, well, we can fill the ranks on junior people, but more seniority, so it's almost impossible for us to find someone like this. Also for us, and that diverges a little bit on what you said, we can rank order the value of like adding a new model to the pipeline, building a new tool, or solving a business problem using machine learning. However, the biggest problem right now for us is execution, right? How do you go from raw data to the whole pipeline, build the pipelines, serve the data to a data scientist, build the model, make sure that the model is working in production, put that model to serve your customers or serve your internal customers, and then make sure that this is giving you the right predictions that you thought you were going to have. So this execution part involves a lot of people, a lot of points inside of the company, and it's extremely hard. So it's not because you build a model, you've got an AUC or an R-square, it's done. You have to put it to work, and that's the real challenge for us.
Great. I agree with you with a more corporative perspective, but we also see that the technology, and when you have the right people, it's not the problem. We have a lot of problem in the first mile data and the last mile when we need to implement and deliver the solution to customers, internal clients, because this last mile is very difficult sometimes. We see this in a lot of articles. Do you agree with this? In more for you too? Serasa and Nubank have this clarity of the problems that we can solve using machine learning, or the problems are still a little bit?
Well, I would say that our case is a bit different. I mean, it's a lot different of Nubank, because we have, the company is 60 years old, so we have a lot of processes that are legacy processes, that are traditional processes, and you have to keep doing that as well. But I would say that, at least in our experience, my unit there is a research and development unit. So our mission is to generate new ideas, and we did this accounting, and for each 20 ideas, we managed to make only one of 20 becomes a product in the end. And the problem is that some things that you do, is you have a machine learning a good idea, but the market is not ready for that, or the infrastructure that you have is not ready, so you cannot deploy the solution. That's, I think, is a problem that is, I would say that is worse in companies that are large and older. And then I agree with Sandor that, because you have a lot of people involved in the process, in the whole process. There are some legal limitations as well, because sometimes you do things that are in a gray zone. So, privacy is something that you have to look at. And some solutions are not legal, so you cannot do that. So there are a lot of difficulties in the whole process. I agree with Sandor in this point. At least that's our experience. So.
Interesting, because we're from completely different worlds. You said 1 in 20 ideas are okay. So if we fail in a model, the company breaks. So we don't have the luxury. So because we are a startup, that means we are not making money, which means that most models cannot fail, right? So you cannot simply deploy a model. Let's say we're talking about a risk model, right? And that model goes into production. You have no way of validating it apart from the tests you did. And if after 12 months you were wrong, the company is gone. You broke the company. So we don't have the luxury of failing in a project. So most of the projects we do cannot fail. You have to implement it. You have to. This new version of the model has to be better than the old one. And even with having data, having perfect data, as we have basically access to everything, the way we use models in Nubank, we don't build models directly to the customer. We build models to an internal customer. And that internal customer will make a decision. And by making a decision using the models, that internal customer changes reality. So it's like saying we predict that you're going to spend 10,000 in the next months, but you're risky. So we're going to give you a very low credit limit. The act of giving a very low credit limit changes reality and breaks the model. So we make our models fail, and that goes into the data set. And when you train a new version of the model, it's learning the data that the customer has and our decisions. So this is crazy and very hard for us to solve this problem.
Nice. Now,
yes, maybe I can talk about it's a little bit of frustrating that in academia we don't see the deployment of what we do in practice. So that's something that I can talk, because I know that you are talking about it's difficult to deploy the model even in the companies, but we usually here in Brazil mainly we don't see very much our results being deployed. So it's a little bit frustrating. Maybe this begins to change in the
that was
years.
a question that I was going to make. We see that the ecosystem is getting bigger. We have a lot of startups and programs that get the startups more close to the organizations. But how do you see universities getting closer to corporations, industries? Are we still have room for making this better? What do you think?
Sure, there's a lot of room. Maybe he can talk a little about the experience they have
Yep, I have a point to make about that. Actually, what I think is that there is a tension between short-term and long-term, and that's something that you have to solve in order to have a cooperation between a company and the university. So the company is very short-term oriented, and the university is the opposite, is very long-term oriented. So one idea that we are trying to pursue there with Experian and MUSP is, okay, you have the university to have long-term goals, but we also try to find some quick wins. So you can finance, you can keep funding the project around these quick wins. So I think that's a very difficult balance, but it's sort of, you see, in Nubank, it's not exactly a startup anymore, right?
Still counts.
Okay. But it's more short-term, and the university, as you said, is difficult to deploy. You never deploy. It's always... So I think you have to deal with this balance.
Yes, maybe what you said is about breaking into subtasks, what we do, and then you can interact more.
Good. And we see that something that motivates and move the academy are the publications. And how do you see here in Brazil, the organizations are investing, or they leave room for their collaborators to make publications too, to, I don't know, innovate and make some scientific publications as an organization?
Well, at DataLab, at Experian DataLab, we have this benefit, I would say, that a person can publish, and actually he can spend 1 day a week just to be focused on publishing something. And this is one of the goals for the year, for example. He can establish these goals. I want to publish 1 paper or a number of papers in a year. So we try to keep that going. Another thing that we are doing is we are financing postdocs at the university. So this year, 2 postdocs at the university. And the idea is that those postdocs will be full-time, working full-time in publishing together with us. So that's the way we're trying to do that.
Nice. You?
Well, as I said, we're a startup, so we don't have as much time to devote to that. We have been talking about this, but the main concern that we have is privacy. So most of our data, if not all of our data, is sensitive. So trying to publish something, and we don't have a long history of data, so we cannot draw data that is old to build to write something, because it's still too new. So we're kind of lagging behind in this.
Okay.
Yes. What I see is the problem is usually confidentiality. Yes. Mm-hmm. So I worked once with a company in a project, but we couldn't publish a paper about it because of because of privacy. Yeah. So for us in the academics, it's very difficult because we are evaluated based on publications. Mm-hmm. So there's an issue.
Yeah. 10 minutes. Well, I'm gonna open for questions.
Thank you. I have a question. I would like to know your view about what's the weight of experience when you're dealing or hiring or working with data sciences. There's a famous Venn diagram that combines subject matter expert and math and IT as the 3 main requirements for a data science to be a great data science. I want to know how do you weight any of those aspects?
So for us, it's a well-balanced approach. So basically, we want it all, right? So we try to find journalists who can write very good code, very solid code, because the way we work, you have autonomy to go from raw data to model deployment. So we have to trust you to write a good piece of software, and we have to trust you to be able to build a good machine learning model, so that we try to test the candidates in all of aspects. We understand that it's impossible to be specialists in all of them, and we will try to take this into consideration, but we prefer generalists.
Well, at Experian, we got two types of people who have data engineers. Those are people that are more computer science oriented, or people that are develop software engineers. And the data scientists are people that have a good scientific background. So in the way they can do questions, they know how to formulate questions, interesting business questions. That's what we are looking at. Okay, these people have to know Python, of course, because this is the tool of a trade. But that's what we look for, basically, this background.
Hi, I work for Udacity. We're an online education company, and I have a lot of students who are already employed full-time, and they want to make a break into new areas. So a lot of them want to make a break into data science, into machine learning. But when I talk to them, they tell me, I ask them if they started applying, and they're always like, oh, I feel like I need to study more. I feel like I need to do more Kaggle. I need to do more things before I can start applying. Do you, the two of you who are hiring, and maybe you two from an academia perspective, do you feel that I feel that these people should be starting to apply sooner? They should be, putting themselves in the market. What kind of advice do you have to these people?
Well, I think we are all imposters, right? So we always feel that we're lacking of something, right? It's either writing code or being better at statistics. The real questions is like, what do you want? Where do we want to work? Right? So if this person wants to work at a tech company or a bank, what are those companies in need of, right? And then go prepare yourself to apply for those jobs, right? We could always do more Kaggle, right? We could always do another course, but in reality, you have to try to have a goal and go after it. Right?
Well, we use Kaggle a lot to hire people, actually. I mean, not submitting data to Kaggle, but we use old Kaggle competitions just to check what a person can do with this data. So I think Kaggle is good to have practice on that. But I think people have to find a way to have a solid background. Doesn't matter what sort of course you do, but you have to have a solid background, because the most important thing is learning how to make questions. And that's, I think, is the hardest thing. So that's what I would suggest. Yeah.
Okay. And I think one word that he said is what we try to do in the academics is to give the background. Okay, so if you want the basis, the university will have a lot of that in many areas. So that's where you probably should find something, try to find something to. Okay.
Hi, my name is Alan. I finished my master degree at USP with a project related with machine learning in 2016. And I want to talk about the academic and industry relationship from my point of view, a student, not a teacher or someone from the industry. I feel that the training we do when we do research in a master degree or PhD level at university, we are being trained to be writers in a scientific field, not necessarily researchers or being trained to do discover new things. That's my feeling as a student. And I want to give you a food for thought. What about trying to invest in private research institutes that will give money for researchers doing research at universities, but trying not to focus on publications, but other kinds of measurements of results?
Well, actually, just making a point on that. If you look, NIPS. NIPS is probably the largest conference in machine learning. My first NIPS was in '97. And that time, we had less people than we have here at this auditorium. And if you go now, last NIPS was, we had 10,000 people. And an interesting thing is that the companies are sending much more people to NIPS than the universities. So I did a rank on that, and Google sent something like 400 people, and Amazon, Facebook. And I think the dynamics in this area is changing a lot. And now most of the research is being done at institutes that are funded by companies, big companies, Facebook and Google, etc. But I can't see that happening in Brazil. And I think the problem is that the whole structure here of how you, if you do, for example, an art project, then you can find incentives for doing that. For science, we don't have anything similar. And I think that's the problem. And so it's funny to think about that, but that's I think the problem is. I can see that, unfortunately, happening in Brazil.
Yes, I think there is a large gap between the interests. I know what we're talking about. Maybe it's a little bit frustrating because we are very oriented towards publications, because we are, that's what we are required to do, okay? But I think it's something that needs to change a little bit. There is a lot of discussion among the researchers that this is not the best model, and maybe in the future we'll have other kinds of evaluations that are not so oriented towards scientific publications, and then this can be better. Thank you.
Well, our time is up.
So thank you for this conversation. It was very productive for me. I hope you all feel the same. And that's it. Thank you.